Welcome, everybody. This is Imran, Nanlawala of Digital Learning Partners, and I'm joined by my good friend Ismail Abdur-Rahman, CEO and founder of iVIBES. Ismail, how you doing?
Good, bro. How's it going?
Doing as well as we can, brother, given all the circumstances in life right now, you know.
Yeah, you got that right. Do the
um,
best you can with what you got and keep it pushing.
how's everything been as otherwise?
The struggle's real, but we just trying to survive. Trying to survive day by day. You don't know what's gonna happen. Just gotta roll the punches. Keep
Mm.
moving.
Well, hopefully we have some optimistic news to talk about in the sense of the topic we're discussing today. And we're going to be discussing Joe Rogan, famous podcaster, UFC commentator, comedian, former host of Fear Factor. So he's gone from being a diehard Californian to now very openly and quickly taking his talents to Austin, Texas. Um, and obviously, you know, that comes on the heels of the announcement that he reached a deal with Spotify. The initial deal was reported to be $100 million, but people are saying that it's worth more because he was making $30 million a year on his podcast, anyways. And I don't know if you saw this, but a couple months ago, when Spotify announced the deal, their stock their value on the market,
Right.
it rose like 4 point something billion dollars.
Yeah, almost 5 billion in like 48 hours. Right.
48 hours.
That was that was insane. That was insane. Yeah, when I saw that, I started thinking, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm hunting in the wrong direction. I need to get into podcasting.
Mm.
I mean, obviously he's been at it a while, but the reality is that type of influence. This is good news for like creators. You know what I mean? Um, I'm on the Spotify thing, right? So that's encouraging news for creators, and I think that because he got into the game before podcasting was really that popular, and he was able to, kind of build the brand of his podcast. Um, but he got what he deserved. But 100 million is way too low. Like, there's no way that if you look at if I think it says a 3-year deal. Is that right?
Honestly, I don't remember I think it must be around that because of I think somebody reported like 30 something million a year for 3 years or something. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no way he's going to leave and get for the same money. Like, that wouldn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like,
Of course.
realistically, I would think that the numbers would have to be significantly higher. Like maybe 150, 160, somewhere in that ballpark. I mean, he's getting quarterback money.
Well, he's throwing a lot of people some good passes on the podcast, man.
I know. He's smoking on the podcast too. So I mean, can't be mad at a guy who's going to be himself no matter what. So. But yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. So, okay, he's got the Spotify deal,
Right.
but he's leaving California.
Right.
Now, why do you think he's leaving?
So that's what that now let's get to the meat and potatoes, right? So what you mentioned very accurately is that he was an early adopter of podcasting, right? So definitely that's something that's helped him get that digital real estate and get fame and recognition for being a online content creator, a podcaster. He's very frequently spoken about his dislike for the direction California was moving in, and I got like a summary of a quote, but basically he said it's overcrowded. There's less freedom. He was mentioning that the poor response to COVID. He was really irked by how they handled COVID, especially as a comedian, because he's saying that there's the possibility they're not going to open up comedy clubs until 2021 or 2022. So that's really upset him. But then he's also talking about the homelessness. So I think a lot of it has to do with, in his own words, far left politics, the way they've handled the COVID, the way homelessness has increased, and what's going on with the different cities and how people are treating the properties and whatnot. That's on one side. So do you want to comment on that before I get to the next part of the equation?
Those are significant factors. I mean, they can't be ignored. And the thing is, like with the homeless issue, I think California released like 3,500 nonviolent offenders, and if they don't have anywhere else to go, where do they go?
Mm.
Right? They're sleeping in tents. But then with that, you have all the other problems. So I know they had these, what do they call those? The government's call them like bridge facilities, whatever. That was supposed to house people,
halfway home.
but something like that. They
Mm.
built these facilities around the city. And the thing is that with those facilities, they've got rules. They've got curfews, they've got, drug policies and what have you. And, for some of the people who were released, maybe suddenly, and didn't have a plan and maybe hadn't dealt with, their demons, they wouldn't be candidates. So then what do you do? So I can imagine, I mean, like commuting on your way to work. So I remember seeing Rogan one time saying that while he was filming an episode of Fear Factor, they were filming in Skid Row. And while they were filming, there was a drug addict, like within a reasonable distance. And he pointed out to the contestants, see that guy there smoking crack. And they thought, like, what are you joking? So no, see, he's homeless, that's cracking, and he's really smoking. And it freaked the people out. But I think being in that close proximity to these social problems that seem like they're not being addressed sufficiently by the government, yeah, I can understand why that would, drive somebody when it's a year-on-year issue, right? And it seems to be only worsening. I could understand why that would drive somebody to leave.
So I would say on one hand, so now we're going to get to the second part, but on one hand, you got your personal beliefs, your personal values, and the things that kind of at a personal level make you tick, right? So we discussed that he doesn't like the political direction. He doesn't like some of the things he's seen in the local communities and society in California. But on the other hand, as he's now put on this hat very well and adapted to it, he's a budding entrepreneur, right? He is someone now who at first you could say, okay, he's just a easy-go guy who had a funny radio show or funny podcast and people enjoyed it enough where it got him good money. But you can see now the guy is thinking like a boss, and we'll go into some of those more details later. But okay, California, 13.1 or 13.3 state tax, right?
Right.
This is not the federal tax. Federal tax is for everybody, regardless of what state you're in. So California, 13.3 state income tax if you make over $1 million, which he's making over $1 million. Now, Texas, as a former Texan, so what's the state tax in Texas?
Donut. One of the best things about the state, there is no state income tax in Texas. And obviously, see, again, when you think about him as making the transition from, just a guy who happens to do comedy and happens to do commentary on UFC and happens to do a podcast to, wait, I need to monetize this brand, right? So now, like you said, he's thinking like an entrepreneur, and he's gone from, kind of being a businessman to being a businessman, right? So these are things you have to think about. And at that rate, he's going to save like $20 million. So yeah, it's in that respect, it's clearly a no-brainer. But in addition to that, property values are way cheaper.
So that's next. That's next on the list. So let's do a general formula. If the contract is worth $100 million, and we're anticipating it's worth more, right? So you got your federal tax. Let's get that out of the way, right? Whatever that is. Then if he was to stay in California, 13.3%. Let's just do rough math. That's $13.3 million on $100 million, right? Extra that he would have to spend that he's saving now. And then I know there were some talks in California about a wealth tax. So that would have been something potentially that they would have added down the line as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Now I was going to say, interestingly though, the property tax in Texas is roughly double what it is in California.
Correct.
but it's a wash when you consider the fact that property values in California nearly double what they are in Texas. So it's, I think he still comes out better in the end financially.
So about the property tax, you hit it right on the head. So something that would cost him, like say, $4 to $5 million, which is a lot in Austin, where he's living, right? That same property might cost him anywhere between $10 and $20 million in LA. So if you're talking about comparable size location, it's going to be significantly more in terms of purchasing it in California. The other thing not to forget about Texas is they have something called the homestead allowance. So if you,
Right.
yep, so he could save some on property tax as well, which makes it even more attractive and alluring.
Indeed. And then, let's be realistic, right? He's going to write off probably a considerable um, amount of his taxes anyway, because at least part of his home or estate, whatever it turns out to be, is going to be used for business.
Correct.
So he's going to write off a bunch anyway. But I think that, I forgot about the homestead. I'm glad you reminded me. I was never, when I was in a position to have take advantage of the homestead law. So maybe the next go around. But yeah, last time it wasn't happening for me.
Yeah, so he definitely has those incentives, and now to put the icing on the cake, right? So we talked about some of the social problems in California that were against his own values. So that's already a big minus against California for him. We talked about the no state tax in Texas. So that's a big plus for Texas and a big minus for California. But now, as we mentioned, he is now not a businessman, but he is a businessman, right? So
Right.
he was talking about last week how, okay, he's got his property, but now he wants to buy a ranch. And what does he want to do on the ranch? He wants to have a podcasting. He used the beautiful word, and I forgot how he phrased it, but essentially like a podcast studio for different podcasters, right? Which seems like definitely seems like a gangster boss move in the sense that, does he put him under his brand, and is there licensing involved? How does he charge them? Is he going to be the middleman between Spotify and them? But he also wants to build a comedy club on this ranch. So this ranch is supposed to be like an entertainment, like it's gonna be like an entertainment hub where you can go listen to comedy, go do a podcast, go hang out. I'm sure whenever they legalize marijuana in Texas for recreational use, I'm sure that will be one of the first places that it's distributed. But man, he seems like, because another thing about Texas, and he mentioned this, and I think both of us know this. Texas, in terms of regulations and zoning and whatnot, it's a lot more lax than say places like California or New York. Places that are aligned differently. So I mean, I'm thinking, okay, not only did he save money, not only did he get a great deal with Spotify, and he's gonna automatically pocket more money because of no state tax. He's already thinking about his next. As our friend Patrick David says, right? The next, how many moves?
5.
The next 5 moves. So it seems like Rogan's thinking about the next 5 moves or so. So what do you think about the ranch, the media park, and all that?
I think it's brilliant. I mean, that's like you said, it's a boss move. It's a boss move because now, like you said, he creates his own vertical. You know what I mean? So at whatever that deal is with Spotify, whenever the numbers come out, we'll really know. But with that kind of a deal for licensing, and if I'm not mistaken, he still owns the rights
Correct.
to his content. So
Yep.
It'll be first published on Spotify, but whatever he decides to do to repurpose that stuff later, still on YouTube, where he's got like 5 million views an episode. He's going to come out good. But then if he's opening the facility to have podcasters be able to come in, use the studio, and maybe there's a licensing thing with them, like you said, maybe middleman. I mean, he's finding ways, and again, now he's thinking like an entrepreneur, right? Finding out other opportunities, because who wouldn't want to be aligned with a podcaster like him who just signed a massive deal. And the thing is, as he's building all of these other facilities on his property, these are just more tax write-offs anyway. So it's like he's winning no matter what. But now he's winning exponentially. And you know what? The thing about Austin too. there were two guys who were professors at the University of Texas Business School who started another business school in Austin. I think it's called Acton, Acton, and it's just about entrepreneurship, right? So it's a 12 to 18-month program, something like that, where you do the first part virtually, and then the second part you come to the school, and it's like you're working 18-hour days, learning like entrepreneurship, like in real life. You know what I mean? But the thing is that Austin is setting itself up to be a hub, a regional hub for entrepreneurship, which, 10 years ago, I don't know if people saw that coming, but, leveraging the fact that it's a college town, and you have that spirit of innovation there. And again, you got cheap property and favorable laws. I think that synergy is a perfect storm of opportunity.
I mean, I know we didn't discuss this earlier, but where do you see Joe Rogan, say, 10 years from now? Where do you see him based on the trajectory and the progression that we've seen in terms of digital real estate, physical real estate, the different things he's gotten involved in? What do you see happening? Because another thing is he used to be very active with the UFC, but in his current deal, he doesn't have to go to all the shows anymore. He only goes to like the bigger cards. So what do you see from someone like him 10 years from now?
A lot more ownership, a lot more ownership. So, I mean, I don't know that he's going to necessarily buy out Dana White, but I think that he'll be afforded more opportunities for ownership in whatever he wants to put his hand into. So, for example, he's going to open his own comedy club. He's owning that. Whatever he does with the podcast, he's on the ranch. He's going to own that. And similarly, I think his involvement with sports, now whether it comes in the form of launching his own station, for example, or buying a significant stake in a promotion like UFC or Bellator, I could see more ownership in his future. And if we're talking 10 years, at this rate, the guy's going to be a billionaire. I think he'll do that fairly easily in 10 years.
So speaking about making billionaires, wanted to take this time to highlight a amazing course that we've put together, based on your experience as an entrepreneur, as a business coach, as a business analyst. So I'm gonna go ahead and give everybody a sneak peek at what the course entails, and then we'll conclude the show right after that. So as everybody sees, a great opportunity to learn from the legend himself, Ismail, who's been doing it for decades, working with startups, working with pre-existing businesses and corporations. Ismail, talk to us a little bit about why the course was put together. Why offer this? What's the hope? What's the benefit? Why even do it?
Okay. Well, for me, right, I love entrepreneurship. I love everything about entrepreneurship. And, I started my first two businesses when I was 8 years old. And I've been doing it off and on, since then. But one of the things that I think really motivated me to do this at this time is this. Normally I do live face-to-face workshops with groups of young people or adults, depending on which group we're targeting, and we've had great success. But now, on the heels of this pandemic and looking at what our new normal is going to be, right? So we're going to do a lot more virtually. That helped kind of convince me to move into the virtual space and offer the courses online. And very interesting, economists are predicting that by the end of this year, and we're still in the middle of whatever this COVID thing is, but just by the end of this year, there'll be at least 10,000 new millionaires minted, during this crisis. So they got me thinking, like, okay, wait a minute. Crisis begets opportunity, right? For the people who can spot opportunity. But we know from our school system that some things that we're not taught consistently or very well in school, sometimes not at all, leadership, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship. Those aren't the aims of the school system. So as a person who prides myself on being the champion of all things entrepreneurship, I said, this is the time to try to pass on these skills to a wider range of people, because the thing is, when I'm doing a live face-to-face course, I can only reach the people who can meet me physically. Well, now, leveraging technology and, the beauty of the internet, we can reach people in all corners of the globe and help them develop the skills that might be life-changing for them. Help them develop solutions to existing problems that can make life better for someone else. And importantly, give them the opportunity to not be hamstrung by a failing economy, being made redundant by a job, or a lack of suitable opportunities forward in whatever the localities happen to be. Like, help people become job creators instead of job seekers. So that was the aim. So with the courses, both for the adults and for the youth, they'll learn how to come up with business ideas, how to test them in the market, how to come up with products or services that will solve problems or add additional benefits to existing solutions. And importantly, how to take these to the market and build relationships with their customer base so that they'll be able to have lifetime customers and to calculate the value of what it costs to acquire a customer, the lifetime value of a customer, and understand exactly how to fit those together in order to create a sustainable business.
And just a reminder to everybody who's listening in, you can find out more about the courses at dlpinnovate.com. That's dlpinnovate.com. Flash it on the bottom of the screen right now. And it's a series of videos, discussion questions, which is a way to interact with Ismail himself. He'll be responding to your answers and the thoughts and ideas that you're sharing. There's also PDFs and other ways of exchanging ideas. From time to time, there'll be live webinars or live sessions. So do check it out. And as Ismail mentioned, that by the end of this year, you said 10,000 new millionaires?
A minimum of 10,000, yeah.
Minimum of 10,000. And just to kind of bring what we were talking about to close, I just want to point out that Joe Rogan was a guy who was not associated with being rich. He was not associated with a guy who was making boss moves. He starred in didn't start, but he made cameos in like B or C TV shows and movies from time to time. Right. And he was most notable for being the host of Fear Factor, right? People eating disgusting things on TV and whatnot. So I had to watch myself. I had to be very careful. Right. So you see now how, with the right thoughts and being an early adopter and ideating and putting your ideas out there, taking them to market and testing them and whatnot, he was able to go from a guy who could not own a house to being worth, at least his minimum net worth is $100 million. Minimum net worth is $100 million. Some people say he makes $30 million a year before this Spotify deal just on his podcast. This does not include his supplement company on it, which is very famous now, and they're making tons of money on it. It does not include the money he makes on sponsorships. It does not include what he was making from the UFC. So you see, this is the prototypical entrepreneur of our era, right? You put your hands in different things, utilizing your strong suits. So my experience and my advice to everybody is go ahead and check out dlpinnovate.com. Ismail has been doing this for years. He does many workshops, many seminars. He's got a very active also Instagram channel, which I believe is just iVIBES. Is that correct?
Real_iVIBES.
Real_iVIBES. So do check him out. And Ismail, I'm gonna let you close this out if you wanna close us out with anything about the topic at hand, the Joe Rogan boss moves. Otherwise, we'll call it a day and hopefully see you next week.
Okay. Yeah. Again, just like Imran said, looking at the trajectory of what he's become as a brand. I mean, this was a guy who was just doing stand-up in California, playing to half-empty clubs at one point. And now he has become a brand. And that should give everyone hope, that if you have goals and you're strategic about how you approach them and you're diligent and you trust the process, you recognize it's not going to happen overnight, but your passion and your purpose drive you, then there's no limit to what you might be able to achieve. And if you understand that, then there's no better time to start working on that than now. Go check out that DLP Innovate link.
Ismail, thank you so much for being available today, and hopefully we'll see you next week to discuss another topic. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in. And if you are an aspiring entrepreneur, a business owner, or want to get into those fields, please do check out real_iVIBES on Instagram, and you can learn more about entrepreneurship from Ismail himself. Thank you guys so much. Have a nice day.
Appreciate it.